All right, welcome to a new edition on today's show. As always, we're excited to have you join us. This is Political Spectrum coming to you live from Uyo, the state's capital. And I remain your host, Orunvese Ehinoma Olusegun. As always, our program majorly focuses on everyday political and economic developments in Nigeria and sometimes beyond. We delve into burning and sensitive conversations on policy and policy actions of government, as well as the major political events on the front burner of national and at subnational conversations, creating immediate effects from Nigerian citizens, big businesses, corporate institutions, as well as the civil society, thereby making government more transparent, accountable to its people, our viewers. Now, first on President Tinubu's administration's calendar. Today being 7th of November 2023 marks exactly 164 days of President Bola Tinubu in office as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This is now exactly 5 months and 13 days as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Remember, we're always tracking every activity of government because the buck stops at the table. I remember that statement that the most critical responsibility of government is providing as much as possible benefits to the large number of its citizens within the shortest possible time. And as such, tracking government activities that impacts on lives of people by way of executive decisions and policies are part of our responsibility. Now, let's quickly start from at the sub-national level. We're starting from here in Akwa Ibom, Uyo, the state capital. We have Governor Eno urges appellate court to dismiss Basi Akpan's case. Of course, you know that a lot of the governors may have 1 or 2 cases in court because this last election threw up the largest number of petitions and a lot of questions have been raised. Is it INEC that is the problem, or is it the judiciary, or is it the process? A lot of questions have been asked. Now, in Akwa Ibom State, Governor Umeno has urged the court of appeal sitting in Lagos to dismiss the appeal brought before it by Senator Basi Akpan of the Young Progressive Party, YPP. He prayed to the court to uphold the decision of the lower court, which declared him the winner of the governorship election of March 18, 2023. YPP and Senator Akpan in an appeal are challenging the judgment of the governorship petitions in tribunal in Uyo, which confirmed Eno as the validly elected governor of Akwa Ibom State. Now, according to a statement issued by Senior Special Advisor on Research and Documentation, Dr. Esien Ndueso, shortly after the hearing on Monday, the governor, through his lead counsel, Paul Uso Esien, whose former MBA president, faulted the arguments by the appellants that the judgment of the Supreme Court in the matter of certificate forgery by Mr. Akpan Okon was different from the certificate forgery case brought before the election tribunal by Senator Akpan. He had argued, and I quote, when the court gave the judgment, he clearly decided that the said documents were not forged but belonged to the second respondent. It implies that the judgment is applicable to PDP, INEC, the court, or any establishment for that matter. He urged further that it was legally imperative that there should be an end to litigation, and as such, the appellants had no reason to keep belaboring the court over a matter that had been sufficiently resolved at the highest court of the land. Now, the appellants, jointly represented by Tunde Falola, held that they were dissatisfied by the ruling and judgment of the tribunal, upholding the preliminary objections of the respondents and dismissing petition, hence the appeal. Now, the appellants argued that they had presented 18 witnesses before the tribunal had sufficiently shown that the second respondent was, at the time of the election, not qualified to contest the elections because he presented a forged certificate to INEC and that he was not elected by a majority of lawful votes cast at the election. Now, counsel to INEC, Kolakpa Kolade, SAN, said the petitions never produced the true owner of the certificate, which they claim did not truly belong to Umweno, and that they never produced any document to buttress their claims of forgery. Now, on his part, counsel to PDP, Tayo Yetibo, SAN, among other things, argued that even the first appellant, Bassi Albert, presented before the lower court 3 documents that bear the arrangement of his name in 3 different ways. 1, Akman Albert, 2, Bassi Albert Akman, and the third one, Albert Bassi Akman. Yet still claimed ownership of the 3 documents. Also, the governorship candidate of the Accord Party, Kofi, approached the appeal court seeking that the judgment of the lower trial tribunal be overturned in his favor. Now, the governorship candidate and his party, represented by their counsel, Chidi Nwachukwu, argued that he deserved to be declared the governor as other candidates in the election were not qualified to contest the election. All matters were adjourned to a later date for judgment. And the first thing I want to bring out is when there is judgment sitting and there is no certainty as per which way it will sing, most often it affects development. Our prayers are that these issues are put behind us so that the executive governor of Akwa Ibom State will be clearly and fully focused on the developmental strides and the Arise agenda, which is his brainchild. All right, moving quickly to the second development. Supreme Court ruling undermines Nigerian trust in the judiciary. And that statement, though weighty, is credited to the Labour Party candidate, Mr. Peter Obi. Now, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party in 2023 elections, Peter Obi, on Monday said the Supreme Court judgment that affirmed Bola Tinubu's victory in the election as the nation's president is a breach of Nigeria's trust in the judiciary arm. Now, the former Anambra governor said this in a world press conference held at the party's national headquarters in Abuja while responding to the Supreme Court verdict. Peter Obi on Monday explained his absence at the Supreme Court, saying he was unable to attend due to a prearranged international commitment. Now, earlier, our news media had reported that the Supreme Court had affirmed the decision of the tribunal on Obi and Atiku Abubakar's appeal. The Apex Court affirmed that other panel members agreed with the lead judgment delivered by John Okoro, dismissing Atiku Abubakar's appeal and challenging the judgment of the Presidential Petition Tribunal. Now, Justice Salawa had said, and I quote, "The application by Atiku is frivolous and vexatious and deserves to be dismissed. I find no merit in the appeal and dismiss, and I affirm the decision of the lower court." During the World Press Conference, Obi expressed concern over the Supreme Court's apparent disregard for public opinion, suggesting that it has neglected its duty as both a court of law and policy. Now he says, and I quote before we play his video, "It is therefore with great dismay that I observe that the court decision contradicts the overwhelming evidence of election rigging, false claim of a technical glitch, substantial non-compliance with rules set by INEC itself, the identity theft and forgery that have been brought to light in the course of this election matter." Now, these were hefty allegations that should not have been treated with levity. Now, let's listen to the video from the horse's mouth himself, Peter Obi.
Theft and forgery has been brought to light in course of this election matter. These are hefty allegations that should not have been treated with levity. More appealing, the Supreme Court judgment willfully condoned breaches of the Constitution relative to established qualifications and parameters for candidates in presidential elections. With this counter judgment, the Supreme Court has transferred a heavy moral burden from the courtroom to our national conscience. Our young democracy is ultimately the main victim and casualty of the courtroom drama. Without equivocation, this judgment amounts to a breach of confidence of Nigerians have in our judiciary. To that extent, it is a show of unreasonable force against the very Nigerian people party and candidates, Gatti and I have now exhausted all legal and constitutional remedies available to us. However, this end is only another beginning of our quest for vindication of hope in common man for a better Nigeria. After all, sovereignty belongs to the people, even for historical purposes. It behoves us to place our disagreement with and deep reservation about this judgment on public record. We have long been aware of how weak the national institutions have negatively affected our democracy. This year, 2023, has been quite remarkable ability. INEC displayed competence in the conduct of the statutory duties. The judiciary has largely acted in defiance of the constitutional tenets, precedents, and established ground rules. Political expediency has preceded judicial responsibility. A mechanical application of technicalities has preceded pursuit of justice and fairness. Both INEC and Supreme Court, as refereed respectively, shifted the goalpost in the middle of the game. Where the value and import of INEC and recent Supreme Court ruling ends is where our commitment to a new Nigeria begins. Our mission has been more about anchoring a new Nigeria, and it remains unchanged. It is a nation where things will work, where the country will be led from its present waste and consumption orientation to a progression-driven economy. Our commitment is to a nation anchored on principles of prudent management of resources, to quickly pull millions out of multidimensional poverty, ensuring transparency and accountability in equitable distribution of opportunities, resources, privileges. In the new Nigeria, we aim to address all unmet needs by showing compassion for all those left behind by the present system. Going forward, we in Labour Party and the Obedient Movement are now effectively in opposition. We are glad that the nation has heard us loud and clear. We shall now expand the confines of our message of hope to the rest of the country. We will meet the people in their places where they.
All right, that was the presidential candidate of the Labour Party expressing his views, just like the presidential candidate of the PDP did some days earlier. And one denominator in the argument is that the Supreme Court, in giving its judgment, has not been sensitive to the plights of the masses. Now, the question is, do public opinion matter? Because there's always this balance during the court that the court is not a moral institution. It's an institution based on technicalities, legalities, spirit, and letters of the law, whatever that means. I'm not a lawyer anyway. But the arguments have been that if people feel this way, why will the court uphold a most infamous opinion and by that way infringe on a lot of, perceived grounds that the court had to have, responded in a different way from the way it responded. So all those developments will continue to go. But hey, some people have their say, while some people already have their way. The Supreme Court has made his statement. Can anything change? Well, I doubt. All right, moving on to the next one we have been seriously following. We know that from countdown, we have exactly 4 days to the off-cycle, the all-important off-cycle elections. And there are a lot of reasons why we will say it's all important, because by research from political pundits, 2 of the states who are going to be involved in those elections are the 2 highest states in Nigeria's history in terms of flashpoints, violence, and political mayhem. And you get to see why. Now, 4 days to Bayelsa, Imo, Kogi governor polls, uncertainty looms. Fear of violence and apathy is rife. Election threatened in 15 of 27 local government areas in Imo State. Battlegrounds of Bayelsa and others to be followed. Now, IGP Egbetokun also made a statement saying police is ready for peaceful elections. Of course, police will always come up to say theirs. Police is also saying citizens can come out and vote, and that police will ensure their safety. Now, 4 days to the off-cycle Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi governorship elections, there is palpable tension in 3 states. These are fears that apathy and violence may mar the exercise in parts of the 3 states. Stakeholders' allegations and counter-allegations of plots to rig the polls via violent conduct have added further to the flaming fears. Now, in Imo, residents have expressed worries that raging insecurity in 15 out of 27 local government councils may affect the elections negatively. Now, in Kogi, places like Dekina, Ejule, Kotonkafe, Igalamela, Odolu, Kaba, Bunu constituencies and Yagba East are emerging as hotspots. Indeed, the PDP candidate Senator Dino Milaye and the ruling All Progressives Congress traded words last Thursday over alleged plots to import thugs from neighboring states such as Kwara to violently manipulate the poll. Now, the Chief of Defense Staff, Musa, and the IGP Egbetokun read the riot act to troublemakers disturbed by the development. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, last Thursday visited 3 states, also tried to interact with the stakeholders and assured them that the security agencies would ensure peaceful polls. But that is a source of concern. Now, also the Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Egbetokun, warned political gladiators and their followers that the police and other security agencies will not allow any act of hooliganism, political rascality, lawlessness during the November governorship elections in Bayelsa, Kogi, and Imo State, or any other state across the country. Now, speaking during the visits to the 3 states, where he held meetings with heads of security agencies, General Musa told stakeholders that troops would remain apolitical to ensure free, fair, credible, and inclusive elections that Nigerians will be proud of. Now, Egbetokun gave all the warnings during an interagency consultative security meeting organized in preparation for November 11, 2023 polls at the force headquarters Abuja, underlining the significance of cross-fertilizing of ideas amongst various security and law enforcement agencies towards election security. Now, IGP Egbetokun said, and I quote, "The goal is to develop collaborative strategies that will ensure the upcoming elections are secure, free, fair, and credible." Now, in attendance were senior officers representing the leader of various security and law enforcement agencies involved in election security, including the representatives of the Service Chief CDS, Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Naval Staff, Chief of Air Staff, Chief of Defense Intelligence, DGDSS, DGNIA, CGNIS, G of the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency also. Now, the meeting dissected a range of topics reflecting the diverse considerations of election security in the 3 states, including an in-depth analysis of potential threats and vulnerabilities. Now, why are these important? These 3 states, maybe with the slight exclusion of Bayelsa, although in the riverine areas there's been records and trends of serious violence. But for Kogi and Imo, we are going to be having a deep conversation about those states. The incumbency, are they a factor in the peace or otherwise the violence and the unrest in the states? What may be their interest? All these and more we will be able to have a conversation about in a short while. Let's take a break and we'll come back. Join us again.
Well, thank you very much. Let me first elucidate a bit. Supplementary budget is a budget that is meant for very important national welfare needs of the people that is not captured originally in budget or does not have adequate funding. I'll give you an example. Nigeria today, we've read it the past 1 week for United Nations World Food Organization that 26.5 million Nigerians will go hungry next year. This is an issue of national importance that we can go for supplementary budget. But we have a supplementary budget where we are mentioning issues of yachts, SUVs for First Lady's office, shows to the extent that this government is totally uncaring and we're in deep trouble. It shouldn't be part of that. In fact, bringing in First Lady's office, which is not in our constitution, is even more troubling. All funds meant for First Lady's office should be allocated and addressed to dealing with the girl-child issue of education, to deal with the issue of education of the girl child in Nigeria. First Lady is there to look after the husband and work with him and everything to ensure that everything works well. So for me, the other ones you ask is the issue of SUV for national assembly. Again, I can put it in the same basket that I put the alien one. Is that trouble? The SUVs for both houses will cost in the region of, I think it's in the region of about 60 billion, if I'm right. Nigeria today, our primary healthcare today is collapsed. Which consequently, Nigeria now have higher infant mortality than India, a country that is 7 times our population. For you now to use funds that is higher than the fund allocated to primary health care to buy a car for 400 people, it shows height of insensitivity. And we have a way we can buy more competitive vehicle and everything for them, even from locally made, and most of them, even in the Senate, are people who already have cars. We don't really need to buy vehicles for them because some of them are my colleagues, ex-governors and everything. They don't need new cars again. It is time we must shake and show responsibility to what is happening. People, Nigerians, are already scamping for food from waste bin. And we're doing this. It shouldn't be. And I can go for that to give you an example of how I handled it even when I was governor. So it's not the first time. When I became governor, I found out that the judge of High Court don't have cars in Anambra State. The permanent secretaries don't have cars. And when I became governor, they ordered for me 2 bulletproof vehicles. And I said no. Collect the money back, paid it to PAN, and said supply us 50 406 cars, 18 to the justice, 18 to PAN state, few to the commissioners that are appointed. The rest became my deputy governor and myself. Throughout my first term, everybody in Anambra State there, I used 406. Nobody, but it was meant for 2 bulletproof cars. The money we used to buy these cars, and nobody killed us in that 4 years. So it is time for us to use money very judiciously. as you can see, everybody have done now that all institutions are broken down. Like financial, it is now for all of us to work hard together to ensure that we save the country. Those who are in office, do the right thing. Those who are in opposition to ensure that the right things are done. And we will do so on our own back against them.
All right. Excuse me. Welcome back. I have my first guest who is going to be joining us from London, Dr. Oluseun Rahul Ajayi. Is a development consultant and a public affairs analyst. Dr. Sheun, good morning to you. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you so much.
Quite a while. How have you been?
Always for inviting me. Thank you.
How have you been?
Yeah,
Quite a while.
I've been well. I've been well.
We've been hearing news that you've been traveling from countries to countries and civilizations to civilizations, spreading the good news. Hope you are carrying us. I hope you are carrying us along.
Oh yeah, of course, definitely.
Nice to have you back on the
me.
show. So let's get into the crux of the conversation. Now, as a build up to the 3 off-cycle elections, there are fears that apathy and violence may mar the exercise in parts of the 3 states due to violence, political thuggery, intimidations. The list is endless. Are the people justified for entertaining these fears? Let's start from the electorates. Let's start from the people, the residents. Are they justified to be afraid?
Thank you so much. I'm good morning to well-meaning Nigerians from all over the world. I'm again happy to be here this morning and to, of course, do justice to the realities in our nation, Nigeria. Um, as per your question, I think the obvious is very clear. It's important to acknowledge that concerns about apathy and violence that often lead to off-cycle elections are not uncommon. I mean, we've seen historical cases from Osun State in 2018, Imo State, quite a lot of and the ratio of violence has been quite alarming. And given the complexity and often passionate nature of politics, it's been very, very common. However, it's crucial to approach this fears, if consider various factors that always contributes to them. So, if I pick on the historical context, one factor to consider is the historical context. If there have been for people to be concerned about a recurrence, so acknowledging these concerns and the history of this region's electoral process is very vital. Again, the role of the Electoral Commission in ensuring a free and fair election is very pivotal. Um, Historically, also, and even just in our, just concluded election, um, statistics has it that you know um, public opinion in terms of how people perceive the electioneering, the campaigns, the period, the sessions. It's been quite worrisome. It's been quite concerning. So if the Electoral Commission takes proactive measures to address, for instance, security concerns. I mean, we've seen brazen, bold, courageous snatching of ballot boxes. But if the Electoral Commission's role ensures this security, fairness, and credible, I mean, if they ensure credibility of these elections, we're going to entertain, and we're going to have transparency.
Okay,
We're
doctor,
going to
my
have,
intention, my intention, doctor, because I always like your debates. My intention is not to interrupt you, but you keep
yeah.
referring to the Electoral Commission. Yes, the Electoral Commission has a major role to play. But in the issue of violence, should the buck not stop on the table of the security agencies, the NSCDC, the police, and the army, since we've decided by our political tradition, we have decided to militarize all our elections because of, yet again, the desperation of politicians? Should the blame really be the blame about violence and intimidation and thuggery and ballot snatching? Should the blame be on INEC? Remember that INEC doesn't even have a prosecutorial role. Theirs is more like a referee. They cannot they cannot prosecute anybody. They have to go through the processes of maybe writing petitions to the judicial institutions also that are also questioning, because all those issues will come up. So should we not apportion appropriate blames to all the necessary stakeholders? What are the security agencies doing? Yes, doctor, back to you.
Okay, thank you for that. So absolutely, I would say, and to be very honest, I mean, like any other Nigerian who knows the obvious, yes, the buck obviously stops on not just the table of the security agencies, but also on the Electoral Commission. It is essential for the Electoral Commission to identify these very hot spots, and then commit, very reasonable resources. I mean, security, architecture, and resources to these areas. I want to say again, it's quite unfortunate that political leaders have also, and I say this without any apology because it is very obvious. I mean, these are things that we see, I mean, on pages of social media with fact evidence, where political leaders have appeared to have hijacked security architecture or security resources in the states, particularly when they are in power, when they are not in opposition. So, but what I want to say essentially is that we just have to, there's a political responsibility, there's a security responsibility, there's an electoral responsibility. We all have to put our hands on deck. Every stakeholder is very important in this. The traditional leaders, our religious leaders, our civil, I mean, there's a civic engagement that's quite necessary. It's important to also engage the citizens to participate, without resorting to violence. Again, security agencies, we've said this times that number, they must realize that they should be very unbiased in elections of this nature, and as much as possible, not allow themselves to be tools in the hands of politicians who will eventually dump them after the election process. So everyone has a responsibility, absolutely, in elections of this nature. It's quite unfortunate that we have said this times to that number, but well, we've never had any solution. But we'll keep speaking. We'll keep speaking to the real issues. The evidence is out there that they're always biased. So there's little or nothing that social commentators or public affairs analysts can do. We can only commit our thoughts, our opinions, and
Yes,
our
quite correct, doctor.
recommendations. So essentially, what I'm saying in essence is that all hands has to be on deck. There should be civic engagement. There should be the electoral commission's role, and it's absolutely to take proactive measures: identification, examination, evaluation, assessment of the real hotbeds, the spots where you have electoral malpractices and where you have tendencies, where you have ballot boxes being snatched. They should identify these spots
Okay,
and
doctor.
have
Yeah. Yes, doctor.
All
You
right.
have clearly enumerated that those hotbeds should be identified. Now, we've read all sorts of journals, especially as a build-up to this Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa elections. They say in Imo alone, you have about 17 local governments that have violent flashpoints. Now, in Kogi, it is not, it is also the same story. Bayelsa may have about 2, 3, 4, 5 zones, because first, the state is quite a small state, has barely about 8 local government areas, although it has the same 3 senatorial districts and all that. Now, the issue of flashpoints, yes, as an analyst, you can say trend over the period of politics. But the issue of flashpoints, a lot of pundits recently have also argued that it could be the nature of the leadership of those states. Now, let us go into my next question. Now, in Kogi State, for example, there is a lot of arguments and lots of criticisms that Governor Yahaya Bello allegedly, so we are not confirming anything on our platform, wants to have a third tenure by proxy, and as such, he has foisted his predecessor, protege, so to speak, on members of his political party and the state, which has cost some candidates. If you notice, the SDP candidate was formerly APC, the ADC candidate was formerly APC, and a few other political parties, they had to leave because Yahaya Bello has said this must be the person or nothing else. So people are arguing that Yahaya Bello, ever since the political godfather died and he was selected instead of the deputy governor then as governor before he now came for his second term, that Kogi has been enmeshed in a situation of serious violence and bloodletting. Recall Natasha Akpoti's narration of the whole ordeal, how the road to her senatorial district was completely cut off. And then when they asked Yahaya Bello to explain what happened, he said some people were bringing violence and they had to prevent them. I've never heard in my life where a governor goes to cut a road leading to the constituency of an opposition and claim that it's because he wants to stop violence. Now, he went from Kogi so that I don't look as if it's only Kogi we're talking about. Let's see Imo. Ever since Rochas Okorocha left Imo, yet again, we had a Supreme Court ruling that brought in Hope Uzodinma from 4th position to 1st. Very contentious. Under, what's the name of the Alaji then, that was the NJC person. Now, since then, what we've been hearing in Imo is unknown gunmen, unknown gunmen, unknown gunmen. We know Olu has been a hotbed of bloodletting. Some parts of Owerri, surprisingly, Ngokpala. We can go on and on and on. Are we saying there was violence during Rochas Okorocha? Yes, a little. Was there violence under Ikedio Hakim? Yes, a little. But it has gone to a different level now under Hope Uzodinma. And if you've read some of the newspapers, some traditional rulers are even saying that whatever comes out from their area should be properly scrutinized because they don't even have access to move freely because of the promises of hell and violence. So should we be looking at data of past places where we have violence, or should we be looking at the nature of the leaders within those federating units or states as they were? Because the nature of leadership eventually determines, you know, whether there will be violence or not. Doctor.
All right, thank you so much. As an analyst, usually it's important to, when you're considering, an incident, it's important to also consider what is relevant and what's not relevant. As far as I'm concerned, the factor of who the leader is a very significant one. Apart from this, historical historical evidence also is very, it's like adding 1 plus 1 to make it 2, or
I
2
agree
plus
with
to
you.
make it 4.
I agree with you.
If as far as I'm concerned, I think in elections of this nature, particularly in those states, Imo and Kogi, who are known with significant ratios of violence. If I were a security officer or the electoral body, I think it's important to consider all these factors. And like I said earlier, all lands has to be on deck. Everyone has to come to the table and realize that this is an election. It's not a do or die affair. So
But I can assure you
if
that
I were,
some politicians are not seeing it the way you are seeing it. Because ideally, why should we have violence? Why should there be threats of violence? Recently, you saw what happened in Rivers State. During the general elections, you saw what happened in Rivers State. Right now, it is beginning to
oh
be
yeah,
clear the reasons why Fubara became governor. Because then a lot of people will say Wike said that it was for the people, the Ikwere people had ruled, and that an Ijaw man should have the position.
yeah,
But now it's beginning to be obvious that state capture may be connected. Now we are not confirming anything. Just like you said, as analysts, we must look at trends and then extrapolate elements or indicators to show exactly what the outcome is meant to be.
oh yeah,
And the issue of violence is very
yeah.
serious, because if you look at the first schedule of the Constitution, the protection of lives and properties of the citizen is the utmost responsibility of government. So if people cannot come out to vote, and the few people who are coming out to vote are scared that they may go down through the bullets of guns by thugs, and sometimes even the security institutions may become complicit in maybe enhancing a political party and showing partisanship, then a lot calls for concern, Doctor.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you, Doctor.
Okay, I lost you at some point.
Yes. All right. At this
I
point,
lost you.
yes. At this point, I want to know whether there's supposed to be a Barrister Tony who's going to be joining us on this conversation. Barrister Tony, have you joined us? Okay. Once my producers give us the signal, we'll continue. All right. Moving forward, because violence seems to be the major bone of contention, especially in these off-cycle elections. But I'll really quickly add one more. The police has announced that they've expanded their personnel from 27,000 to 40,000, including other security agencies. And that tells one story: over militarization of our elections. Why would there be need for 40,000 security agencies in Kogi State alone? Why would there be need for that? I want you to just make a comment on that.
Yeah, it's simply, it stems from the nature of, Kogi State elections, is particularly historically. I mean, in the last 4 years, we know what happened in Kogi State, and then of course, in the last general elections, we know how all eyes were on Kogi State, even as just being one state out of 36 states of the federation. We know the politics, we know the gimmicks, the games that were played during the election. We can't miss words with particularly with what happened in Kogi State. So all I can say is that the over militarization of elections, particularly in Kogi State, it also on the other hand raises concerns about the role of the military in the democratic process. On one hand, you can say that or establish that it's due to the nature of violence, the exacerbated, nature, the extravagant nature of violence in that state. On the other hand, we can also, I mean, based on or stemming from what happened, years back in Ekiti State, my state where I come from, how the military were, heavily involved. I would say that, we just have to be very careful. It raises a lot of concerns because, while we understand and agree that security is very crucial during elections, there are alternative approaches to ensuring the safety of the, electoral process without excessive military presence. Instead of my suggestions. Instead of relying heavily on the military, I think it's important to have a focus on professionalizing and strengthening the capabilities of the police, who are primarily saddled with the responsibilities of protection of life and properties, during elections of this nature. These agencies can be trained and equipped to handle the election security effectively, as far as I'm concerned. Again, there should be, well, we have had that, but we can also still recommend again that effective collaboration, among civilian security agencies, election officers, relevant stakeholders can also help in creating that secure environment for our elections. So, as far as I'm concerned, in this election in Kogi State, I'm seeing as an individual, my opinion is to establish without mincing words that the over militarization of the Kogi State election is with a view to intimidation, as far as I'm concerned.
But a lot of
And
people have argued,
I want to say
Doctor,
categorically
a
that
lot of
government has to be
people
very
have
careful.
also argued that the over militarization of the elections is as a result of the magnitude of violence and because of the nature of the person that is outgoing executive governor in the state. Would you also agree with that argument? We are not confirming anything here.
Yeah,
We are just
I
saying
just stated it.
these are the things
Yeah,
that are
I
at
just
the corridors of conversations, burning issues.
yes. Oh, yes. There are schools of thoughts, like I said earlier. There's a school of thought saying, oh, the militarization of this election is with a view to providing effective security. But I'm saying categorically that this is the primary responsibility of the police department or the architecture. I don't see a reason why we need to introduce the use or adoption of military to handle our elections. It is of no use as far as I'm concerned. And you have also on the corridor of analysis where you find secure. The military also being adopted with a view to intimidating those who are not on the side of government. We have seen those issues. Ekiti State, where I come from, it's obvious. We've seen evidence, we've seen calls, we've seen text messages, we've seen evidence. Sad evidence, bad evidence, where military has been used to intimidate the electorate, the opposition, and whoever does not speak for government. All right. So what I'm saying in essence is that let's have a balance. Let's have a balance. We still need to fall back to the original protectors, the original in terms of security for the election. We should provide security with a view to protecting the the electorate rather, not intimidating them. All right.
Okay.
If we add, I foresee a very bad and sad post-election violence that we may not be able to curtail ourselves. And government just has to be serious. This third term agenda, that has been fueled, that has been speculated, should not even arise. Why would a government or why would a governor want to, foist, a third-term agenda of what use? Do what you have been elected to do effectively and without any, shadow of doubt, leave government responsibly. And go on your sabbatical or whatever it
Okay,
is.
okay.
I think I think all right, yeah.
Doctor, a lot of people will argue that with you. We have seen over the political culture, over the years, over the decades in Nigeria, that the average political class is interested in what will benefit him or her. So nobody really is accusing any governor of not seeing a third-term agenda. The accusation has been third-term agenda by way of proxy. You put in your own person so that you will now be the piper dictating the tune. You are not there, but you are there. We understand what happened in Rivers, where the chief of staff was appointed for the governor. 15 of the 16 commissioners were appointed for the governor. All the key sensitive areas where the governor can flex muscles and powers, it is the political godfather, so to speak, in parentheses, that have put boys who are loyal to him there, which means that particular administration has been captured and is controlled from Abuja. But like I said, there are allegations. Nothing has been confirmed. Doctor, I want to thank you so much. While you still stay on, we're trying to bring in a lawyer because there's another issue we're supposed to discuss real quickly, maybe in the next 20-25 minutes before we wrap up, which is another complaint of a capture of the Temple of Justice, talking about the Supreme Court and the National Judicial Council, that has been the bone of conversation recently. Remember when Dajito was about to leave the NJC, he made a lot of statements and he said the NJC must do something about it. Now, in July 2023, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, CJN, presided over a meeting of the National Judicial Council, NJC, to appoint his own son, a judge of the Federal High Court, on October 4th, as his father presided over the swearing-in of his own son. I fell to the old student association of Ikolaba Grammar School, which the new judge attended, for his secondary education, to defend his appointment with the cringe-inducing statements that, contrary to the claims in some quarters, Justice Ariwola's son, that's Ariwola Jr., his appointment as a judge was not on the influence of his father, who is the CJN. They lacked the standing to say this, of course, because they could not possibly know how he was appointed. Now, in June 2023, the NJC convened to approve the elevation of the president of the Court of Appeal's son-in-law. This individual was previously being appointed as a judge of the National Industrial Court of Nigeria, NICN. A mere 6 years earlier, in 2017, in January 2021, the governor of Plateau State swore in the wife of the same son-in-law herself, the daughter of the same president of the Court of Appeal, as a judge of the High Court of Plateau State. The following year, the wife of the judge president of the NICN, was similarly appointed, a judge of the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory. Now, her brother, like her husband, was also a member of the NJC. Meanwhile, at the meeting where it approved the son of the CJM for a judgeship, the NJC also approved for appointment to the Federal High Court a nephew of the Chief Judge of Ogun State. Now, what is good for the judge is also good for the politicians. So as the country headed into the 2019 elections many years ago, which is about 4 years ago, the then ruling party handed the ticket to represent Bauchi North in the Senate to the husband of the president of the Court of Appeal, who plays the primary role in election dispute resolutions. On his exit from the Senate 4 years later, talking about Bokachua, the senator confessed that instead of using the bedroom to enjoy geriatric conymbium, he had converted into a venue where he habitually encroached on his wife's judicial independence for the benefit of his political co-travelers, talking about his colleagues in the 9th Senate. Meanwhile, following the retirement of that president of the Court of Appeal, her husband became surplus to requirements, and the party promptly reallocated the ticket in 2023 for a senatorial seat instead of to one of the sons of the CGN. Not to be outdone, another major political party handed a ticket to the House of the Representatives to another son of the same CGN. Now, in 2022, the governor of Bayelsa State appointed his wife as a judge of the state High Court. He is just one of many senior politicians around Nigerians who keep their own judges in their bedrooms. These examples are just a tip of an iceberg of what has become a pattern of diversion and capture of the high judicial office in Nigeria by a mutually sustaining set of political and judicial insiders, mostly connected through bloodlines, personal favors, or sometimes even genital relationship. Now, more than 63 years after independence in Nigeria, this group has conspired to erode judicial independence in Nigeria. Law professor Ise Sage, the senior advocate of Nigeria, who also chaired the Presidency Advisory Committee Against Corruption, PACAC under Buhari, in the administration of Muhammadu Buhari, was on firm grounds when he declaimed over 3 years ago that sons and daughters of retired and serving judges and justices are being nominated for appointment into sensitive judicial positions at the expense of more qualified candidates without privilege, supporting and backing. But among Nigeria's first 8 indigenous CJNs, until after Mohammed Uwais, who retired in June 2006, only the first, Adetokunbo Ademola, could count a child of his, that's Philip Adeneko, as a judge. Many among their successors since then used their office at the head of the NJC to prefer their own children to high judicial office with no care or concern for conflicts of interest. Indeed, a former CGN preferred 2 of his own children to the High Court bench and another 2 into positions in the registry of different courts in the country. Now, we have some video clips of Professor Chidi Odinkalu, that was a former chairman of the human rights advocacy or whatever institution, which is a non-governmental organization, campaign seriously about high judicial officers bringing in their sons, their cronies, their mistresses, their wives, and their relatives into offices as against people who are supposed to take those offices by way of merit. Barrister Tony, good morning to you. Finally, you have been able to join us. How are you doing?
I'm very fine. I'm very fine. Good morning.
Nice to have you around. We're trying to situate.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Barrister Tony?
Okay, I can hear you very well.
Okay, very good. So we're trying to situate the argument that involves you.
Yes, I can hear you. Go on.
Yes, that involves you, and that is the lamentation by Professor Chidi Anslem Odinkalu, saying, he's not the first who has said it, that there has been a judicial capture right to the apex, to the top of our judiciary. And before I begin to ask you questions, I want us to play a clip of Professor Chidi Odinkalu. There are 2 clips we have. Let's play that so that you will take a listen to it. They will come back and have a conversation about that.
Chief Justice of Nigeria. And, first of all, I've got to wish all the new judges well. By the way, judging is a very difficult thing. It's a huge responsibility to sit in judgment over others. For those who are Christian or live by the Christian Holy Book, it says, judge not so that you shall not be judged. And so judging is a very heavy responsibility. And I'm not going to sit down here and tell you that I don't have a sense of consideration for the responsibilities these people are taking. I think I'm older than everyone who's been sworn in here. And so anyone who's older than me falls into a bracket, younger than me falls into a bracket. But that said, the idea that the Chief Justice sits down at the NJC to be approving appointments for his son and the children of his mates and all of that is messed up. And we have to be honest in saying that. He's saying the NJC barks and bites and bites aggressively. Will the Chief Justice bite his son aggressively? That's the problem. When they are filling the judiciary with their family members, will they be going to bite their family members aggressively? These are other people's children that they'll be biting aggressively. There is something fundamentally wrong with that. Until Justice Uwais, who was the 8th indigenous Chief Justice of Nigeria, only one Chief Justice, the first Chief Justice, Chief Justice Ademola, had a son or a child of his on the judiciary. That was the late Neka Ademola, who rose to the Court of Appeal but couldn't get to the Supreme Court for reasons that should not detain us here. But since then, I will not go into details on this program, but most Chief Justices, with the exception of about 2 of them, have had, or 3, if I add one of the ones that was forced out, have had their children or relatives appointed to high office in the judiciary. That will suggest a tendency that needs to be questioned. And when members of the bench begin to convert judicial office in order to create family dynasties in it, that begins to undermine public confidence in the judiciary. A transcript actually of that particular deposition, because I want to educate myself on the issues. And it seems quite clear that the university's testimony is that the certificate, the INEC diploma, as it is called in the deposition, was not issued by the university, by the Chicago State.
Arise News Channel, so they deserve their credit. But Barrister Tony, you can hear clearly the former human rights advocate chairman saying it very clearly that over the years, in fact, there was a clip I watched, he said in the 70s and the 80s, the corruption crept into the magistrate courts. Then towards the 90s and early millennia, it moved into the high courts. And just, a few years ago, they were worried that the appellate courts had become engrossed in some kind of, judicial corruption. You have the terminologies. First off, as a lawyer, is Professor Chidi Odinkalu's claim, is it a valid one, Barrister Tony?
Well, I want to agree with him to an extent. I don't think I should disagree with him in any form. But the other part to add is that it's not just in the judiciary. Well, in the appointment of judges and magistrates. Now, sometimes you come to the judiciary and ordinary staff of the judiciary, you see the father, the mother, and 3 children all working in the same judiciary, right? Probably different locations, but it shows a family business, okay? When you have a father as a registrar of courts, the wife as a registrar of courts, the one of the brothers or 2 of the brothers also in the same registry, working as staff. Ordinarily, one would say when you have one person in a family working in a particular institution, the other should locate some other institution to avoid and compromise, okay?
Okay.
The judiciary is somewhere where there could be a lot of compromise could easily happen, and that's the last hope of the common man. A lot of things hang on decisions that are made there. So when you have your father as the exhibit keeper in one court and the son is probably at the other court and can be approached to compromise some positions, it doesn't really speak well of that office. But that is how Nigeria has evolved over time. From tradition, Nigeria believes in hereditary, even in churches. You find parents trying to make their children take over churches from them. If you go to banking sector, you find most of the people in the banks are people whose parents were either at the central bank or apex of the banking industry. And they rise very quickly, right?
Yes.
So it is something that is interwoven into the fabrics of the Nigerian culture.
Okay.
And we appreciate it.
Okay, Barrister Tony, I like
if you work as a chief
judge. This your analogy.
Yeah, if you work as a chief judge of the state.
This your analogy is very interesting. I know you are a lawyer and you are vast. You have a show that is very popular that deals, on legal issues and the critical nitty-gritties. I've listened to you. But will you take succession plan of a business enterprise or a ministry? Forgive me, because the ministries, even in Africa, are run as business enterprise to somewhere as it's supposed to have a lot of sanctity and supposed to have a lot of reputation like the judiciary. Remember when Atiku said the last time that if he goes to appeal, he doesn't get to seek redress, he doesn't get judgment, and he goes to the Supreme Court, he doesn't get judgment, the next place he's going to is to seek judgment from God, which means after Supreme Court, there is no other way. So if at this level, the Supreme Court, there are allegations over the years. Professor Issa Sage also said the same thing when he was Judicial Advisory Council for Muhammadu Buhari. If the Supreme Court becomes encroached or becomes enmeshed in serious issues of compromisation and corruption, and the accusing figures are being pointed to the politicians because they are the ones, arguably that are the ones orchestrating all these kind of appointments against lawyers who have merits. Should we not be afraid? Should we not be worried that there is a problem with our democracy?
Of course, we should be worried that there's a problem with our democracy, but not worried that there's a problem with the judiciary. Now, let's take, for instance, I am a Supreme Court judge, and I have a son. I have mentored, and he's very perfect in the craft. Would I recommend him to be appointed as a magistrate? I think I would, all right? Without saying he's my son, so he's not qualified. If he's qualified and he does well, I've seen lots of judges' children that are excellent in their craft. And if they're appointed, I would not bat an eyelid, okay? But yet again, there are some that don't even have the qualities or the qualification. And they get promoted and elevated when they ought not to be elevated, just because the father wants to reward the son, okay? There are certain children that have come to study law when they weren't supposed to study law. They didn't want to study law, but their parents pushed them into law. And they come out and they can't practice the law profession because they don't have the aptitude.
Exactly.
And their parents, in a way, as a way of settling them, would make recommendations. Please get him a job here, get him to be magistrate. And over time, he will rise in the rank and get to be a judge and probably advance to the Supreme Court. Sometimes it works. A lot of times it doesn't work. But I dare say, where a man is qualified for an office, he should not be discriminated against on the premises that the parents also work in that same jurisdiction.
Okay. So you are being subtle.
I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, of course, I understand. I understand. You are being subtle about this thing that has created some kind of hue and cry, especially from very notable, lawyers. Now, you said something about a son or a daughter.
No, you wouldn't say I'm being subtle.
Okay, I'm coming to you. I'll give you the chance because we're wrapping up now. We may not have more than 7 or 8 minutes left. Now, you have talked about son and daughter. And there is reason, there is logic in what you've said. Now, Odinkalu didn't end with sons and daughters. He mentioned wives. He mentioned cronies. He went as far as mentioning mistresses. In fact, there was a video I watched when he said, if you show me the list of judicial appointments, I will tell you the people through which they came into. His emphasis are more on the deterioration. Because if you look at politicians, what they want to do, according to Professor Pato Tommy, is what is called a continuous or a systemic state capture. And how do you do state capture? You capture the political parties, you capture the institutions, INEC, then you come to capture the judiciary, and all the elements are supposed to, be indicators of a truly democratic institution. So how about the cronies? How about the mistresses? Because that has also become rampant. I want you to comment, Barrister.
Well, if you look at the political class, appointments are not based on merits, right? The governor would appoint 250 PAs.
That's correct.
And will not appoint them on merit. He'd rather go to somebody who will appoint sons of politicians. All right? Go look at the list. So these people have turned the public sector into family sectors. You walk into an office, even in a civil service, and everybody is related to one politician or the other. If you're not related to a politician, you don't get the job. They don't even advertise the jobs again. They pick people from the sideline. So the same thing is happening to the judiciary.
So is there a danger in that?
The judiciary is full of human beings.
Is there a danger in that?
The judiciary is full of human beings. And I don't, so much as we say the judiciary has a higher level of importance in the society and should not allow itself to be permeated by such activisms. But it does happen because these people are still humans and they have their children who've graduated and don't have a job. They have opportunities to create jobs for other people. And the first line of thought is, can I create one space for my child? In every appointment in Nigeria today, people are given slots. In every appointment, be it political appointment or judicial appointment. As long as there's a space for employment, people are referred to. Do you have somebody you want to fill this space? We have space opened up. 50 people, we want to give you 5 slots or 6. And they sit down and ballot for slots. What do you expect from such a society? We have so personalized institutions, which ought not to have been so. We don't outsource these things. In most cases, I know I was privy to a list of appointments of judicial officers before they even publish the call names for invitations for people or lawyers to apply for it. I had a complete list, and it came out 100%, right? The people went in, wrote the exams. They also wrote the exams. The one way or the other, the names I had turned out to be the same names that were pinpointed, but they had to follow due process by advertising for those offices, conducting interviews, and getting the people out. So what will you do in that circumstance? You can't go to court with it.
Okay, okay. Barrister Tony, I'm going to take you up personally on this. I'm going to create another edition where you and I are going to have this conversation. But let me quickly bring in Dr. Raoul from London. I know you are not a lawyer, but of course, the issues that are berating and reducing the quality of democratic processes we have and the eventual outcome, the capture of the judiciary is a major issue at the front burner. Now, I know you are not a lawyer, but Dr. Raoul, say something about this as we wrap up.
All right, thank you. As far as I'm concerned, I think I would like to still pitch my tent with Barrister Anthony Ebuk.
How convenient.
Well, because
see him smiling.
I'm saying
see Barrister Tony smiling.
I'm saying this. I'm saying this not just theoretically, but it also happened to me.
Yeah.
As far as merit, as far as you merit, and such a position or role, I don't see a reason. I think as Nigerians, I'm one. I think we are just sometimes overly emotional about issues. As far as I'm concerned, in nations that also work, I mean, we've seen cases where father, there are many cases because of want of time, I may not mention it. But as long as merit is a significant factor, as long as the essentials are satisfied. I mean, what do I mean by the essentials? As long as the individual satisfies the requirements to occupy that position, I don't see a problem.
Very good.
I think we're just
very good. And Dr. Sheung, because we don't have much time.
Let me add this very quickly.
Okay, all right.
Let me add this very quickly.
Okay.
Let me add this very quickly.
Okay.
For instance, in my case, my father is a professor of real estate. I was in fact, I was just 5 meters or 10 meters away from my father's office. My office was about 10 meters away from my father's office. And I've been discharging my, duties as I won best lecturer when I was even appointed.
Okay, Dr. Sheung. Dr. Sheung, your example,
so
your example may not be the most appropriate example because I know you to be someone that is very acutely insightful and very intelligent. And just like Barrister Tony had said, there are cases where your son or your daughter could merit it. But my question, I'm going to throw this to Barrister Tony as we wrap up. We have barely 45 seconds to wrap up. who gets to judge? In the case of Ariwola, for example, who gets to judge if Ariwola Jr. was qualified to be judge? Who gets to judge? Who gets to judge that? Barrister Tony, as we wrap up, 30 seconds, please.
His performance. His performance.
Okay.
His performance will judge him.
Oh, his performance will judge him, or his performance had judged him before his father allowed or approved him to be a member of the Judicial Council?
No, his performance will judge him, because the Constitution has clearly stated it must be 10 years post-call, nothing more. So if he has spent 10 years post-call and he has the favor of the panel, then he can fly.
All right, thank you very much. I think we have exhausted our time. I wish we could continue on this conversation. I want to thank you, gentlemen, Barrister Tony Ebuk, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I'll be watching your own conversations on your program. And Dr. Raul Sheung, we appreciate you, because anytime we call upon you, even though you are 6,500 miles away from us, you always join us. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Barrister Tony, we are coming back on this. I won't let you go. Thank you. All right, that's about all we can take on the show. It has been engaging and very, very thought-provoking. Remember, we always assure you that the conversation on nation building and deepening democracy does not end and will not be exhausted. And it's our responsibility to bring these things to the fore when we argue for and against, to create more illumination so that people can understand and the engagements will continue. Remember, even wars of nations that has resulted to killings and bloodlettings are settled by dialogue, and dialogue is by constructive conversations for and against. On that note, I'd like to tell you that I appreciate your participating on the show today. My name remains Onwese Inoma Olusegun. I'll see you on the next edition. Have a great day.